Have you ever met someone who keeps trying to fix their focus, but no matter what they do, they end up drifting back into distraction? Maybe you've seen it in friends who swear they're going to change their routine, delete every app, wake up early, read every day, or study without fail. They try to force themselves into a new life overnight, and for a short time it even works. But the moment stress hits or life gets heavy, they slide right back into the same loops of procrastination and noise. You've probably known someone who wanted to change their habits for good. They blocked notifications, bought planners, watched productivity videos, and tried every method they could find. But a week later, they were exactly where they started. And sometimes that person is you. But what if I told you there's a Japanese method that helps you rebuild your focus from the inside out? A method that doesn't rely on pressure, hype, or dramatic change. Something so simple and subtle that you won't believe it works, until one day you realize everything around you has changed. This method is called Zanshin, and it can reshape your discipline, your attention, and the way you move through life. Before we dive into how Zanshin works, I'd like to ask you for one thing. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and tell me in the comments what you struggle to focus on the most. I read every comment because many of the videos here come directly from your requests, including this one. Your stories and challenges give me the inspiration to build content that actually helps. Thank you for being here. Now, let's get into the video. Chapter 1. Understanding the Mushin State. Fear is one of the oldest instincts in the human mind. It shows up in different ways for everyone, yet its roots always trace back to the same place: uncertainty. When you do not know what will happen, when you cannot control what lies ahead, a part of your mind begins to tighten. This tightening is the birth of fear. But to understand the Mushin State, you must first understand something far more foundational. Fear does not begin outside. It begins in the quiet spaces inside your awareness. It is the mind attempting to protect itself, but doing so in a way that often harms more than it helps. The Mushin State teaches that the mind can reach a place where fear loses its grip, not because danger disappears, but because the mind stops clinging to imagined outcomes. This may sound abstract at first, but the idea is simple. Fear is not just a reaction, it is a habit. When the mind faces uncertainty, it begins to create stories. It predicts failure, pain, loss, or embarrassment. These predictions feel real because they happen inside your consciousness. The body responds with tension, hesitation, and avoidance. This becomes a loop. Thought triggers emotion, emotion triggers reaction, and reaction confirms the original thought. Over time, fear becomes automatic. You don't choose it anymore. It chooses you. The Mushin State interrupts this cycle by changing the way the mind experiences thought itself. Instead of wrestling with fear or trying to push it away, Mushin teaches a different approach. Remove the mind that fears. This does not mean becoming empty or numb. It means becoming clear. Think of your mind as a lake. When fear enters, the surface breaks into ripples. The water becomes disturbed. You cannot see the bottom clearly. Most people respond by splashing harder, trying to force the water still. But that only creates more disturbance. Mushin teaches you to stop splashing. Let the ripples fade on their own. When the surface becomes still again, visibility returns. The lake was never broken. It was only shaken. In the same way, your mind is never broken by fear. It is only disturbed by attachment to thoughts. The Mushin State is sometimes described as no mind, but this can be easily misunderstood. It does not mean having no thoughts. It means having no unnecessary tension around thoughts. You can think a thought without becoming it. You can feel fear without being controlled by it. You can sense danger without collapsing under it. This shift in awareness is the beginning of detachment, not emotional coldness, but clarity in motion. Fear wants to freeze you, but Mushin allows movement. It allows action without hesitation. Humans often assume fear appears because situations are dangerous, but in truth, fear appears long before danger does. You fear a conversation before it begins. You fear a possibility before it becomes real. You fear a judgment before anyone speaks. This gap between reality and imagination is where fear thrives. Mushin shrinks this gap until only reality remains. The mind experiences the moment directly, without adding stories, predictions, or assumptions. When this happens, fear has nothing left to cling to. To understand Mushin more deeply, you need to see how fear shapes the way you live. Every time you hold back on something you care about, there is a silent negotiation happening inside your awareness. A subtle voice begins to whisper, "What if this goes wrong? What if you're not good enough? What if you fail? What if you embarrass yourself? What if you lose everything?" These questions build pressure. They create a future that has not happened yet. The more the mind imagines danger, the more the body begins to react as though the danger is real. But this reactive state is not clarity. It is distortion. Fear changes your decision-making. It makes you overestimate threats and underestimate your ability to handle them. It narrows your thinking. It makes you hyper-aware of risk and blind to opportunity. You begin to shrink your life to avoid discomfort. You choose safety over growth. You choose familiarity over challenge. You choose certainty over possibility. Without noticing it, you start living inside a smaller version of yourself. Mushin reverses this shrinkage by teaching the mind to experience the world in its actual form, not the form created by fear. One of the core insights behind Mushin is that fear is almost always tied to identity. When you say, "I'm scared," what you often mean is, "I'm scared of losing who I think I am." You fear judgment because you fear losing reputation. You fear failure because you fear losing confidence. You fear conflict because you fear losing peace. You fear uncertainty because you fear losing control. But the Mushin State teaches that identity itself is fluid. You do not need to defend who you are when who you are can grow. Fear holds you to the past. Mushin opens a path to the present. In the Mushin State, the mind does not cling to self-image. It does not replay the past or project the future. It does not create unnecessary thought loops. Instead, the mind becomes grounded in the task itself. Whatever you are doing, your awareness rests fully on that. There is no room for fear because fear lives in the spaces where attention is scattered. When attention becomes unified, fear dissolves on its own. The mind becomes steady. The body becomes responsive. Action becomes precise. You operate without the friction of doubt or hesitation. People who experience moments of Mushin often describe it as a sense of quiet strength. Not confidence in the loud sense, but confidence that does not need to announce itself. It feels like standing inside your own awareness without being pulled by inner storms. It feels like moving through life with fluidity instead of resistance. It feels like discovering a part of yourself that has always existed, but has been buried beneath layers of noise. This quiet strength is not something you create. It is something you uncover. To deepen your understanding of Mushin, consider how fear behaves when it is observed. If you close your eyes and simply watch a fearful thought arise, you will notice something interesting. The thought appears, grows, and then fades. It is not permanent. It does not stay unless you feed it with more thought. When you treat fear like a visitor instead of a truth, the visitor eventually leaves. This is the foundation of non-attachment. Your mind stops gripping fear as if it defines you. Instead, it becomes something that passes through you. Mushin is not about suppressing emotion. It is about allowing emotions to move without controlling your direction. Imagine standing in a river. The water rushes past your legs. You feel the force, but you do not get swept away. Fear can still appear, but it does not dictate your next action. You feel it, acknowledge it, and continue moving. This state of grounded awareness is what transforms your relationship with fear. You do not need to eliminate fear. You need to eliminate its control over you. Another powerful aspect of Mushin is its connection to presence. When the mind is anchored in the present moment, fear loses most of its power because fear often lives in imagined futures. Presence simplifies life. It reduces mental clutter. It removes unnecessary internal commentary. The more present you are, the less room fear has to grow. The mind becomes cleaner, lighter, and more resilient. You begin to trust yourself again. The Mushin State also invites you to accept impermanence. Everything in life changes. Fear grows when you cling to things as if they must stay the same. You cling to your comfort, your position, your status, your plans, your expectations. When change threatens these attachments, fear rises. But when you accept that change is inevitable, your mind relaxes. You stop fighting reality. You stop resisting growth. Fear fades because fear is resistance disguised as protection. The path toward Mushin is not about achieving perfection. It is about refining awareness. It is about seeing thoughts clearly, feeling emotions honestly, and responding to life without being hijacked by old patterns. This is not a quick transformation. It is a gradual unfolding. But every small glimpse of Mushin changes you. It gives you a taste of what your mind can become when it is free from unnecessary tension. Understanding Mushin is the first step toward living with less fear. Once you see how fear operates in your mind, you can begin to loosen its roots. You can begin to respond to life with clarity instead of panic. You can begin to choose courage over avoidance. You can begin to live in alignment with your deeper nature rather than the noise of your imagination. This is the essence of the Mushin State, a mind free from fear's grip, open to possibility, grounded in presence, and ready for whatever comes next. Chapter 2. Breaking the Roots of Fear. Fear has many layers, but the deepest one is rarely the one people see first. Most individuals only notice the surface reactions, the tightened chest, the hesitation, the racing thoughts, the need to flee or freeze. These symptoms feel like the fear itself, yet they are only expressions of something far more complex. To break the roots of fear, you must understand how the mind constructs it piece by piece until it becomes a structure that feels immovable. But the mind builds fear the same way it builds anything else. It begins with a thought, repeats it, strengthens it, and eventually accepts it as truth. The process is subtle, and because it is subtle, it can be dismantled. The first root of fear is anticipation. The mind sees something uncertain, and instead of observing it clearly, it rushes forward into imagined consequences. Anticipation is the birthplace of most inner limitations. You imagine what could go wrong so vividly that the imagined outcome feels more real than the situation itself. This habit of projecting into the future weakens your ability to act in the present. And the more often you practice anticipation, the more quickly fear arises. It becomes automatic. The mind learns to expect danger even when there is none. Breaking this root requires learning to stay with what is unfolding now, instead of escaping into possibilities. When the mind stays with reality, fear has less room to grow. The second root of fear is attachment. Humans attach themselves to ideas of who they are, who they should be, and how things must unfold. When life challenges these attachments, fear rises. You fear losing reputation, security, certainty, acceptance, control. But attachment is built on the belief that these things define your worth. This belief is fragile because everything in life is temporary. If you tie your stability to things that change, you live in constant fear of losing them. Breaking this root means loosening your grip on the things you cling to. It means recognizing that identity can evolve without being destroyed. It means understanding that letting go does not weaken you. It frees you. The third root of fear is memory. Past experiences shape the way the mind interprets new ones. If you failed before, your mind warns you it could happen again. If you were hurt before, your mind expects more harm. Memory becomes a filter through which you see the world. The filter is meant to protect you, but it often limits you instead. When a past event becomes a permanent reference point, every new attempt feels heavier. Yet memory is not the problem. The attachment to memory is the problem. Breaking this root requires separating the past from the present. The past can teach you, but it does not have the right to confine you. The fourth root of fear is comparison. Humans constantly measure themselves against others. usually without noticing it. But comparison creates pressure. You fear not being enough because you believe others have already set a standard you must match. This fear grows as long as your value depends on someone else's progress. Comparison takes your attention away from your own path, your own growth, your own rhythm. Breaking this route requires shifting your focus inward. Your journey is your own, and when you recognize that, the pressure created by comparison begins to dissolve. The fifth root of fear is resistance. When life doesn't match your expectations, the mind begins to resist what is happening. Resistance creates tension, and tension feeds fear. You fight reality because you want it to fit your idea of how things should be. But the world rarely follows such expectations. The more you resist change, the more afraid you become of anything new. Breaking this route means accepting the fluid nature of life. Acceptance is often misunderstood as passive, but real acceptance is powerful. It means seeing clearly instead of fighting shadows. When you stop resisting, the mind relaxes. And when the mind relaxes, fear weakens. The sixth root of fear is illusion. The mind creates illusions about danger, identity, failure, and uncertainty. These illusions are built from assumptions, not facts. They are built from thoughts, not reality. But because the mind can imagine vividly, illusions feel convincing. Fear thrives when illusion goes unchallenged. To break this route, you must question the stories your mind tells. You must examine whether a fearful thought is truth or assumption. When you ask the right questions, illusion begins to dissolve. Fear loses its foundation. The seventh root of fear is avoidance. When something feels uncomfortable, the mind moves away from it. But the more often you avoid discomfort, the more powerful discomfort becomes. Avoidance reinforces fear by telling the mind that discomfort is dangerous. Over time, your comfort zone shrinks. Breaking this route requires leaning toward what you usually avoid. Not dramatically, but consistently. Each small approach weakens fear's grip. Each moment of courage expands your sense of possibility. Once you understand these roots, something important becomes clear. Fear is not a single emotion, but an ecosystem. It grows through reinforcement, repetition, and habit. The mind feeds it through anticipation, attachment, memory, comparison, resistance, illusion, and avoidance. To destroy fear, you must dismantle the ecosystem that sustains it. This process is not about forcing the mind into bravery. It is about removing the structures that make fear seem necessary. Fear survives because the mind is rarely trained to observe itself. People react to fear automatically rather than examining it. The mind jumps, pulls back, or shuts down. These reactions are learned behaviors. The Mushin State approaches fear differently. Instead of reacting, it watches. Instead of resisting fear, it allows it to appear without adding judgment. When fear is watched instead of resisted, its energy weakens. It does not evaporate instantly, but it loses the power to control your behavior. This shift is profound because it transforms fear from a master into a signal you can understand instead of obey. Breaking fear also requires changing the way you relate to uncertainty. Most fear comes from wanting control over what you cannot predict. But uncertainty is part of life itself. Trying to eliminate it only creates more fear. The key is learning to move through uncertainty with awareness instead of anxiety. This is where Mushin becomes transformative. In this state, the mind does not cling to expectations. It does not demand reassurance. It does not drown in imagined outcomes. Instead, it works with what is in front of it. This presence allows you to act even when the future is unclear. Another important part of breaking fear is accepting vulnerability. Many people fear being vulnerable because they believe vulnerability equals weakness. But vulnerability is natural. It is impossible to grow, connect, or succeed without stepping into situations that expose you to risk. When you accept vulnerability instead of hiding from it, fear loses one of its strongest anchors. Vulnerability shifts from being a threat to being a path to expansion. Courage is often misunderstood as the absence of fear. But real courage is acting while fear is present. Mushin supports courage by removing the unnecessary thoughts that amplify fear. When fear appears, it is just an emotion, not a command. It becomes something you can recognize, breathe through, and move past. This is how the mind becomes stronger. Not by eliminating fear entirely, but by changing your relationship with it. Breaking the roots of fear is not a war. It is a process of understanding, detaching, observing, accepting, and realigning. Each step weakens fear's foundation. Each moment of awareness reshapes your inner landscape. Over time, fear stops being a barrier and becomes something far smaller. Something manageable. Something that no longer defines your actions. When the roots of fear lose their strength, the mind becomes clearer. Decision-making becomes easier. Life becomes more open. You begin to trust yourself not because the world becomes predictable, but because you develop inner stability. This stability is the essence of transforming fear. It is not something the world gives you. It is something you build within your own awareness. This marks the shift from being controlled by fear to becoming someone who can move beyond it. Chapter 3. The Collapse of Internal Noise. There is a moment in every person's life when they finally notice the noise inside them. Not the noise around them, but the one that never stops speaking within. It comments on everything. It judges everything. It pulls attention away from what matters and toward what hurts. Most people assume this inner noise is normal, even necessary, because they have lived with it for so long that they cannot imagine a life without it. But the path toward the Mushin State begins with the honest recognition that the noise is not a companion. It is a weight. It is the invisible force that holds a person back from clarity, strength, and decisive action. Internal noise is not loud in volume. It is loud in effect. It corrodes focus. It magnifies fear. It amplifies doubt. It creates a second presence inside a person, one that argues, interrupts, and overwhelms the natural rhythm of the mind. When someone attempts to work deeply, internal noise drags them toward distraction. When they try to remain calm, internal noise reminds them of every reason to be tense. When they want to take action, internal noise whispers about failure. It is subtle enough to go unnoticed, yet powerful enough to shape a person's entire life. Most people try to fight internal noise through sheer force. They attempt to silence it by resisting it. But resistance creates more noise. The harder they push, the louder it becomes. That is because internal noise feeds on attention. It thrives when someone tries to make it disappear. The struggle strengthens the thing being struggled against. So the cycle continues, leaving the mind exhausted. The collapse of internal noise begins not with fighting, but with observing. The first shift is the realization that thoughts are not commands. They are not truths. They are not warnings. They are simply passing events, no different from clouds moving across the sky or wind pushing through trees. Internal noise loses its power when it is seen clearly rather than obeyed automatically. A person may still hear the noise, but they no longer feel obliged to listen to it. This is the beginning of freedom. When someone starts observing internal noise without becoming entangled in it, they discover a strange effect. The noise begins to separate from the self. What once felt like me starts to feel like something happening inside me. The distinction is subtle, but transformative. Instead of I am anxious, it becomes anxiety is present. Instead of I am afraid, it becomes fear is moving through the mind. Instead of I am distracted, it becomes distraction is appearing. This shift decreases identification with the noise, and the noise begins to weaken. Observation is not passive. It is deliberate presence. It is the willingness to stand still internally while the mind reveals itself. It requires patience, because internal noise does not disappear all at once. It fades gradually, the way a fire shrinks when it is no longer fed. Presence is the lack of fuel. When someone remains anchored in awareness, thoughts eventually lose their emotional pull. They arise, pass, and dissolve. What remains is space. This space is not empty. It is deeply alive. It is the natural state of the mind when it is not entangled with fear, memory, or anticipation. It is a mind that responds rather than reacts. It sees reality as it is, not as internal noise distorts it. This spaciousness allows the mind to make choices with clarity. It also allows courage to appear naturally, because courage is not the absence of fear. It is the absence of mental clutter. The collapse of internal noise does not mean silence forever. The mind will always generate thoughts, but the difference is in the relationship to those thoughts. Instead of pulling the person around like a puppet, they pass by like distant echoes. Internal noise may still appear, but it no longer shapes outcomes. This is the threshold of Mushin. It is not a state of no thought. It is a state of no interference. Modern life makes internal noise worse. Constant stimulation keeps the mind in a state of friction. Notifications, comparison, hurried schedules, and emotional overload create a baseline of unrest. People live in a world that is always demanding something from their attention. So the noise increases until it becomes the default soundtrack of the mind. Many feel overwhelmed not because their lives are too busy, but because their minds are too crowded. They have lost the ability to return to internal stillness. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the alignment of movement and awareness. A mind in stillness can work intensely, move quickly, and respond strongly. But it does so without fragmentation. There is no tug of war inside, no conflict between thought and intention. Every action becomes clean. Every decision becomes direct. Every movement is free of hesitation. This is the quiet power that emerges when internal noise collapses. It feels like strength without force, clarity without tension, and effort without strain. The collapse of internal noise requires consistency. Awareness must be practiced like a skill. The more often a person brings attention back to the present moment, the weaker internal noise becomes. Attention is the anchor that steadies the mind. Without it, the noise grows wild. With it, the noise recedes. Over time, the mind becomes more transparent, more calm, and more capable of deep concentration. A quiet mind is not a fragile mind. It is resilient because it is not easily disturbed. It can face uncertainty without panic, stress without collapse, and challenge without internal chaos. This resilience allows a person to meet fear directly instead of trying to escape it. Fear loses its sharpness in the absence of noise. It becomes something that can be examined, understood, and moved through. Clarity replaces confusion. Stability replaces turbulence. Purpose replaces doubt. The collapse of internal noise reveals something profound. Fear was never the real enemy. Noise was. Fear is a natural response to risk. Noise turns it into paralysis. Fear is a signal. Noise is a distortion. Fear points towards something meaningful. Noise pulls someone away from it. When noise collapses, fear becomes usable energy. It becomes a precise message instead of storm. This is why the Mushin State is known for producing calm under pressure. It is not because fear disappears, but because nothing inside is fighting with it. To collapse internal noise is to reclaim authority over the mind. It is to stop letting random thoughts dictate emotional states. It is to stop letting doubt stop progress. It is to stop letting imagined outcomes control behavior. Internal noise collapses when someone returns attention to what is real and releases everything else. Reality is simple. Noise is complicated. When a person commits to the simple, the complicated begins to dissolve. The Mushin State is built on this dissolution. When noise collapses, what remains is direct experience. The mind becomes steady. The heart becomes grounded. The body becomes responsive. The person becomes whole. No longer fragmented by scattered thoughts, no longer weakened by racing emotions, no longer controlled by inner commentary. This is the power of a quiet mind. Nothing inside pulls attention away from a moment where life is actually lived. The collapse of internal noise is not an ending. It is a beginning. It is the point where a person finally steps into their full potential. It is the moment they discover that clarity was always possible, strength was always available, and calm was always within reach. It was simply buried under layers of noise that were mistaken for truth. When those layers fall away, the mind stands free, ready to face the world with precision, courage, and depth. This is the doorway into Mushin, and once crossed, the journey toward fearlessness truly begins. Chapter 4: The Space Beyond Fear. There is a hidden moment inside every fearful experience that most people never notice. It is a small and delicate moment, almost silent, buried beneath the reaction that rises instantly when fear appears. This moment comes before the racing thoughts, before the tightening in the chest, before the urge to escape or hesitate. It is the moment when fear first emerges in its raw form, untouched by interpretation. It is simply energy, nothing more. But because people react too quickly, they miss this moment completely. They see only the storm that follows. To understand the Mushin State, a person must learn to recognize this moment. Fear becomes something very different when it is seen at the moment of its birth rather than after it has evolved into panic. In this early phase, fear is not overwhelming. It is not destructive. It is not even threatening. It is a single pulse, almost like a knock on the door of awareness. It asks for attention. It asks for clarity. It asks for recognition. It does not demand fearfulness. It does not insist on retreat. It simply arrives. Most people confuse the arrival of fear with the reaction to fear. They believe the reaction is automatic, but it is not. It only feels automatic because it has been practiced so many times that it becomes reflexive. Reaction is learned. Interpretation is learned. The body's response is influenced by years of habit. When fear appears, the mind fills in assumptions, memories, and imagined outcomes. It tells stories about what will happen, what could go wrong, and what should be avoided. These stories create the overwhelming experience people associate with fear. They are not fear itself. They are noise built upon fear. Beyond these stories lies the true nature of fear, and beyond fear lies a space that is free, clear, and untroubled. This space is always available, but it is hidden behind layers of reaction. It can only be accessed by stepping back from the mind's storytelling and returning to the original moment where fear first appears. This is the space beyond fear, and it is one of the most powerful aspects of Mushin. This space feels like stillness within movement. It feels like a quiet center in the middle of a storm. It feels like an anchor that holds firm no matter how strong the waves become. When someone enters this space, they discover that fear is not the enemy. The real threat is the panic created by interpretation. Panic is the mind amplifying fear until it becomes unmanageable. But pure fear is simple. It is a signal, not a command. It is a message, not an order. When the message is understood, the reaction loses its power. This is why people who master Mushin often seem unshaken by situations that distress others. It is not because they are fearless. It is because they see fear clearly, without the noise that usually wraps around it. They experience fear without being consumed by it. They feel it without becoming lost in its shadows. They use it as information rather than as a reason to retreat. Fear becomes a guide rather than an obstacle. To reach the space beyond fear, a person must first slow down internally. Fear urges people to speed up. It pushes them into rapid movement, quick decisions, and rushed interpretation. But speed intensifies confusion. When the mind is moving too fast, perspective disappears. The thoughts become tangled. The emotions blur into each other. The body responds without direction. Slowing down does not mean acting slowly in external life. It means slowing the internal process long enough to see what is truly happening. This slowing down begins with breath. Not forced breathing, not controlled patterns, but simple awareness of breath. Breath anchors awareness in the present moment. When fear tries to pull the mind forward into imagined danger, breath pulls it back to what is actually happening. The breath is always real. The fear is often about something unreal. This anchoring effect creates a small, but powerful opening in the mind. It interrupts the cycle of reaction. It creates space. In this space, fear can be examined rather than obeyed. A person can ask themselves where fear is felt in the body. They can notice the sensations rather than drown in the story behind them. They can observe the thoughts without adding fuel to them. This examination is not analysis. It is simple witnessing. It shifts the mind from being a participant in fear to being an observer of fear. With this shift, the emotional charge begins to weaken. When someone becomes an observer of fear, they begin to understand its structure. Fear always has three parts: the initial sensation, the interpretation, and the reaction. Most of the suffering comes from the second and third parts. But the first part, the sensation, is neutral. It is only energy moving through the body. This energy is not destructive. It has no intention. It has no agenda. It simply appears and fades, like a wave rising and falling. Those who train the mind to stay with the sensation discover that fear dissolves much faster than expected. Without interpretation, it passes. Without reaction, it fades. Without resistance, it transforms. This transformation is the beginning of fearlessness. Fearlessness is not the absence of fear. It is the absence of fear's control. Once a person experiences the space beyond fear, even once, they begin to recognize it in daily life. They notice it during moments of stress. They notice it when facing uncertainty. They notice it when stepping into discomfort. This recognition allows them to return to the space again and again. Each return strengthens the connection. Each moment in that space builds inner stability. Over time, the space beyond fear becomes a kind of home within the mind. It becomes the default state rather than the exception. And when this happens, something strange but profound occurs. Fear loses its authority. It still appears, but it is seen for what it is. It becomes a flicker instead of a flame. It becomes a ripple instead of a wave. The person becomes unshakable, not because the world becomes easier, but because their inner world becomes quieter. This space holds another truth that most people overlook. Fear carries clarity. Inside fear, there is often a direction, a lesson, or a signal pointing toward growth. Fear usually appears where something meaningful is at stake. It shows up at the edges of the comfort zone. It marks the boundaries between who someone is and who they could be. When a person avoids fear, they avoid growth. When they observe fear, they gain insight. When they move through fear, they expand. The space beyond fear lets someone hear the message beneath the feeling. Instead of being overwhelmed by emotional intensity, they can see what fear is pointing toward. It might point toward a conversation that needs to happen, a challenge that needs to be taken on, a truth that needs to be faced, or a step that needs to be taken. Fear becomes a compass rather than a cage. In this space, a person also discovers the limits of imagination. Most fear is imagined. Most of the danger the mind anticipates never comes to pass. Most of the worst-case scenarios are illusions that dissolve when exposed to reality. When someone stands in the space beyond fear, imagination loses its capacity to distort the moment. The mind becomes grounded in what is real rather than in what is imagined. This grounding gives rise to steady confidence. Confidence born from this space is not loud. It is not aggressive. It does not boast. It is quiet and steady, like the inner stillness of a mountain. It does not need external validation because it is rooted in clarity rather than in performance. This kind of confidence remains strong even when circumstances are difficult, because it is not dependent on outcomes. It is dependent on presence. The space beyond fear is the heart of Mushin. It is where the mind no longer fights itself. It is where the person no longer fears their own reactions. And it is where courage becomes natural, effortless, and deeply grounded. Once a person can stand in this space, they find that fear no longer blocks their path. It becomes part of the path. It becomes the teacher rather than the barrier. To live from this space is to live with inner freedom. It is to act without hesitation, respond without panic, and think without distortion. It is to feel fear fully and yet remain steady. It is to face challenges with a mind that is clear, stable, and undivided. This is the promise of Mushin. This is the gift of the space beyond fear. And once experienced, it becomes a guide that leads the person deeper into the strength within themselves. Chapter 5. Living without the shadow of fear. There comes a point on the path of inner mastery when a person realizes that fear has shaped more of their life than they ever understood. Fear has chosen their silence, their hesitation, their missed opportunities, and their unspoken desires. It has shaped the friendships they kept, the dreams they avoided, and the versions of themselves they never allowed to grow. This realization can be painful, but it is also liberating. Because once a person sees how deeply fear has influenced their decisions, they can finally choose a different direction. Living without the shadow of fear does not mean living without fear itself. Fear will always exist because life is filled with unknowns. Change is constant. Loss is unavoidable. Growth requires uncertainty. Fear appears whenever something meaningful is at stake. But living without the shadow of fear means something very different. It means no longer letting fear decide the direction of one's thoughts, actions, or identity. It means allowing fear to exist without giving it authority. It means walking with fear instead of walking behind it. The shadow of fear appears when fear is unexamined. It grows when fear is misunderstood. It expands when fear is resisted or denied. The shadow becomes heavier each time a person avoids discomfort or retreats from challenge. Over time, the shadow becomes a silent ruler that shapes the boundaries of a person's life. They think they are choosing safety, but in reality, they are choosing limitation. They believe they are protecting themselves, but they are protecting only their fear. To live without this shadow, the mind must learn to see fear as it truly is. Fear is just a signal. It is a moment of heightened awareness. It carries information, not punishment. It warns risk, but it does not dictate action. When the mind understands this, the shadow loses its shape. Fear becomes a visitor, not a ruler. The first step toward dissolving the shadow is recognizing the patterns it creates. Fear has a particular way of shaping thoughts. It exaggerates danger. It narrows perception. It simplifies complex situations into urgent threats. It whispers familiar phrases like "not now," "later," "be careful," and "what if it goes wrong?" These phrases feel protective, but they are traps. They delay growth. They postpone necessary change. They build an identity around avoidance. When someone begins to question these patterns, a shift occurs. They start to notice how often fear disguises itself as logic. They realize that many of their reasons are excuses. They see how often they have chosen the familiar simply because it felt safe, not because it was meaningful. This awareness is the beginning of awakening. It is the moment when the mind sees the difference between truth and habit. Once awareness emerges, the next step is acceptance. Acceptance does not mean surrender. It means acknowledging fear without resistance. When fear is met with resistance, the shadow grows. When fear is accepted, the shadow shrinks. Acceptance creates space. It allows the mind to observe without reacting. It dissolves the tension that intensifies fear. In this space, fear becomes something simple and manageable. Acceptance naturally leads to engagement. Engagement means moving toward the things fear tries to avoid. It means stepping into uncertainty with openness rather than dread. It means taking action while fear is present, not waiting for fear to disappear. Action is the most powerful dissolver of the shadow. Each step taken in the presence of fear weakens the belief that fear is a barrier. Each step creates evidence that fear can be moved through. Over time, this evidence builds confidence. Confidence born from engagement is deep and unshakable. To live without the shadow of fear is to live with clarity. Clarity reveals that life is not made meaningful by avoidance, but by participation. The deepest moments of growth often arise from situations that once seemed intimidating. The most profound relationships often emerge from vulnerability. The strongest versions of oneself arise when fear is acknowledged but not obeyed. Clarity shows that fear marks the doorway to expansion. The shadow only blocks the doorway when the mind refuses to see through it. Living in this clarity transforms decisions. Choices are no longer driven by safety alone. They are guided by purpose. They are aligned with values rather than preferences. They are rooted in truth rather than in assumption. Fear still appears, but its messages are evaluated rather than accepted blindly. This evaluation is the essence of maturity. It is the moment when the mind becomes its own guide rather than a follower of instinct. When someone begins living without the shadow of fear, they notice changes in their inner experience. The mind becomes quieter. The body becomes more relaxed. The constant tension that accompanied hesitation begins to dissolve. They feel more grounded, more centered, more capable. They are no longer easily pushed around by thoughts. They are no longer overwhelmed by emotions. Their inner state becomes stable. This stability allows them to face challenges with a new kind of strength. When difficulties arise, they respond rather than react. They think clearly even in stressful situations. They maintain perspective when others panic. This calmness is not practiced for appearance. It comes naturally from living without the shadow of fear. Clarity replaces panic. Presence replaces rumination. Intention replaces hesitation. Living this way also changes how a person sees others. They become more compassionate in their understanding of human behavior. They recognize that many of the actions that seem irrational or frustrating in others are actually driven by fear. This recognition softens judgment. It creates patience. It transforms relationships. When someone stops letting their own fear shape their reactions, they stop fueling fear in others. Their steadiness becomes a calming influence. Their presence becomes reassuring. Their clarity becomes a mirror that encourages others to see themselves more clearly. Over time, this way of living creates a life that is guided by authenticity rather than avoidance. Authenticity is the natural expression of someone who is no longer hiding from themselves. Without the shadow of fear, desires become clearer. Goals become more aligned with personal truth. Effort becomes more consistent. Creativity awakens. Energy flows with less resistance. The person begins to live not as a reaction to fear, but as an expression of their deepest self. This is not a life free from difficulty. Difficulties are part of the human experience. But without the shadow of fear, difficulties no longer feel like threats. They feel like challenges to engage with. They become opportunities to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The mind no longer collapses under pressure. It sees the path forward, even when the path is steep. As confidence grows, the person begins to experience a deeper form of freedom. This freedom is not external. It does not depend on circumstances, possessions, or achievements. It is internal. It is the freedom to act without being held back by imagined dangers. It is the freedom to speak truth without fearing judgment. It is the freedom to pursue goals without fearing failure. This freedom becomes the foundation of a meaningful life. To live without the shadow of fear is to live with intention. It is to face the world with open eyes. It is to embrace uncertainty instead of shrinking from it. It is to feel the fullness of life rather than only its safe edges. It is to experience courage not as a rare moment, but as a continuous state. This is the essence of Mushin. It is the state where fear loses its shape, and the mind enters a place of clarity, stability, and presence. In the final measure, living without the shadow of fear means recognizing that the mind is larger than any emotion it experiences. Fear is temporary. Awareness is constant. Fear comes and goes. Presence remains. When someone lives from this deeper awareness, life opens in ways that were once unimaginable. They move through the world with a steady heart and a clear mind. They act with purpose. They grow without hesitation. They become capable of facing the full reality of life, without shrinking from any part of it. This is the life that emerges when fear no longer casts its shadow across the path. And that wraps up today's journey. If you found value in this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more insights, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. Remember, the real growth happens when you take what you've learned and put it into action. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing forward.